once I started socializing with people, I really, really enjoyed communication, and I always tell people that I can speak to a 3-year-old child, somebody working on the streets, or the Queen of England. I can just speak to anybody, and I always feel confident because I like talking to people.
Yeah, I absolutely love Brazil. It's a whole different, they're aliens. It's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, even the language itself, I love. It's completely,
So beautiful.
it's much nicer than Portuguese. That sounds
From Portugal.
Like, yeah.
That's not Portuguese.
That sounds
that's
like Russian. Yeah, exactly. We started recording on the thingy.
Okay, let's...
No, but I mean, have we started recording audio?
Yeah. We're still recording everything, right? Let's record
Yeah. No, it's fine. You guys just carry on the conversation. We'll start the podcast when you guys are ready. It's fine. As you were.
Jibber Jabber.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's start
Welcome to what used to be Jibber with Jabber. Apparently, this is like a get-together here. It's a Toastmaster meeting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome to today's episode. Today, I am joined by the fabulous, he told me to say that, David Boulos. How are you, bro? Transformation expert. Now, let's get into that, because transformation expert could mean a million things. What is a transformation expert?
Basically, I help executives and individuals transform. So, I mean, there are so many things you could do as a transformation expert, but I do executive coaching, I do life coaching, I am an NLP master practitioner, I teach NLP, I do leadership facilitation. So basically anything that helps people transform.
And also, I mean, I don't know if you're still doing it now, but you're a hypnotist, right?
I do hypnotherapy. It's not my main profession, but sometimes when the time is right and the client is right, I could use hypnotherapy to help patients out too.
So in a sense,
everything clients, not patients. Sorry.
Yeah, but in a sense, everything you could have said, you could have been none of those, but you hypnotize people into thinking that you are those.
Exactly.
So it's just like, yeah, hey guys, by the time I leave here, you're gonna think I'm a this.
I already did something before the show started with you.
Yeah, well, you know, I've been told I'm pretty hypnotic before. So okay, so let's start from the beginning, because you're a bit of a wild card, right?
I am.
From Canada.
Yes.
Raised in Canada, born in Canada.
Yes.
And then it started to change a little bit, right?
Yeah, so I'm, as you can see, I probably don't look like a typical Canadian. That's because by blood I am a quarter Lebanese, a quarter Egyptian, half Greek. So my dad immigrated from Egypt to Canada.
Yeah.
My mom immigrated from Greece to Canada. They met there, and all our family is there. I'm one of the only ones who've left the country. Yeah, but since then I've been all over the world. I lived in Canada for about 28 years. I lived in Germany for almost, 6, 7, 8 months. Then I moved to Dubai about 18 years ago.
Work related or just traveling?
So I'm a little crazy. So I just go places with zero agenda. So one day I just woke up and I said, I need to go move somewhere. Where should I move? And I had a couple of friends tell me, you should come to Dubai. And I said, what's Dubai? I didn't even know what Dubai was at the time. And they're like, oh, check it out. You know, we have this Burj Al Arab hotel, and the economy is booming, and it's really open. And I said, the Gulf, like, oh my God, like my dad left the Middle East to go to Canada for this better life. And never in his dreams would he think that his son would go back. So I came to Dubai just with my suitcase, no job, no contacts, nothing. Landed here in 2003, I think, and just started looking for a job. Like everybody else who comes to Dubai, I'm just going to stay 1 or 2 years. 18 years later, I'm still here.
You put on the Dubai pound to £10, and then you just keep going, spending money and going, actually, I'm making so much money, but where is it going? Because that's the crazy thing I found about Dubai.
Yes.
You can make the equivalent of £5,000 a month here.
Yeah.
And it will just all go. And then you think about, if you were making £5,000 back in London, you'd be like, I would never have spent that. Like, I look at some things that I buy, like when it comes to restaurant, I mean, I don't do it anymore, but, you know, a meal would cost something, you know, like 1,000 dirhams. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. But then I'm like, I would never have paid £200 for this back in the UK. Never. Yeah. It's like, it's hypnotic, the whole experience.
Oh, that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah.
Because when people ask me about hypnosis, I tell them stage hypnosis, for me, doesn't exist. I mean, if it does exist, I don't know anything about it. But what I tell people is that you're in trance every single day of your life. You watch commercials, you're in trance. You listen to people, you're in trance. And when you're in trance, information is being fed into your subconscious mind. So it's funny that
Constantly,
you say that, because you're spending money. Why do you just spend money? I have a couple of theories apart from hypnotherapy. I think it's because we don't pay taxes. We have a lot of excess income here. And also, most people are here without their family. So when you're back home, you're with your family, there's things to do, you're busy. But here, you're all alone. So you want to go out and spend money and do fun things, because otherwise, you're just alone, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there are exceptions with people who are here with their families, right?
Yeah, that's so true. So
Yeah.
then you came here, and then what? Where did you go from here? Because you've changed jobs a lot,
Yes.
you've changed careers a lot, and you've
Yes.
lived in a lot of different countries,
Yes.
and you're also a polyglot, which we'll get into all of these individually.
Sure.
Spoilers there going on, but where do you want to start with it?
Yeah, I mean, I came here. I came here in 2003, and I love the way I get jobs. I don't go through the typical approach of like, come meet this person, submit your CV. I was at a bar. Basically, I was at a bar drinking, and there's a guy who comes up to me. His wife and his brother-in-law were around, and the guy just looks at me and he goes, "Oh, you're friends with my brother-in-law?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he says, "So what do you do for a living?" I'm like, "I just finished my MBA. I have an engineering degree. I'm looking for a job." He goes, "Oh, I own a consulting company." I said, "Oh, interesting." And he goes, "Do you know what an EBITDA is?" I'm like, "Yeah, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization." And he goes, "Here's my card. Call me. I might need you." I called the guy. Not really a formal interview. Boom, got my first job. If it wasn't for this guy, if it wasn't for this bar, I might not have been a management consultant for 14 years. I could have done something completely different. And I find that I give this analogy to some of my clients nowadays, which is, do you want to be a motorboat or a sailboat? A motorboat is, you steer it, you're going where you want to go, and that's perfect. Back then, I was a sailboat. Anywhere the wind blew, it took me there. So I did consulting for 7.5 years. I found it really, really interesting. And then one day I woke up and I was so unhappy. I was like, this is not for me. I'm not fulfilled. I'm not learning, So I tried so hard to figure out what I wanted to do. And it was a combination of not knowing what I wanted to do and the fear of not having a stable income and not having, a career, a stable career, a prestigious career. It was all this fear that made me like dwell so long for so many years and not change careers. So one day I took a really, really crazy decision, and I just said, I'm going to sell everything and leave. So just from one day to the next, I quit my job, sold everything, sold my car, sold everything. And what did I do? Like a little dart thrown against a map, it hit Rio de Janeiro.
Nice.
Why Rio? I don't know. I think Rio it represented freedom to me. It represented fun. It represented something that I just needed at the time. So I flew to Rio de Janeiro. I had a couple of things in 10 small boxes. I shipped them back home to Canada. I flew to Rio de Janeiro. I landed and I didn't know one person in Brazil. No job, no speaking the language, didn't know anybody. And I just started from scratch. And that's like the theme of my life. Start from scratch, right? So that's it. I was just walking up and down the Ipanema beach. I was living in Ipanema. And I just one day looked and saw a volleyball class on the beach. And I said, I need to do things to meet people. So slowly, I started doing volleyball. I learned how to surf in Apuado, which is in Ipanema. I did jiu-jitsu with an ex-UFC champion. His name was Murilo Bustamante.
Okay.
I attended Carnival, and eventually I learned how to speak Portuguese fluently. Did this for 6 months and then left. It's a little bit more complicated, but let's just say that's the easy version. Left, came back to the UAE. This time moved to Abu Dhabi, and that's when I started really realizing what I wanted to do with my life, which is coaching and leadership facilitation and all this stuff. So one thing led to another. I started my own business, and hey, I've been doing this stuff for 7 years now.
And Brazil was like maybe like something you needed to refresh yourself right before kind of putting yourself in a different stage to go and do something different, because Brazil can do that to you. It can take you. I mean, when I went to Brazil, I was there for a while. I absolutely love Brazil. It's a whole different, they're aliens. It's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, even the language itself, I love. It's completely
So beautiful.
It's much nicer than Portuguese. That sounds
From Portugal.
yeah.
That's not Portuguese.
That sounds
that's
like Russian. Yeah, exactly. So that's so much Russian. Brazilian Portuguese is so much more melodic and moving, and even the people are completely different there. I mean, I spent so much time there. I love Brazil. I did a lot of capoeira. That's why I initially went there. And spent time. I've got friends there. We stayed there. I learned to surf there as well. But that was in Floripa.
Okay.
In
That's in the
Florianopolis,
south.
yeah. Really nice for surfing there. And it's just like, you do come back slightly different when you go to Brazil.
You walk slower.
Right? Yeah.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah.
All my friends, we used to walk anywhere, and they would tell me, why are you walking so slowly?
Yeah.
And it's like, in Rio, the pace is
everything's different. But the thing is, I like what you said, because I spent 2 years traveling around the world. Backpack on my back. I didn't care where I was going. I didn't know where I was going. Just like you, learning different languages, going to different places. And there really is something to it when you have no plans.
It's amazing.
It's so much better. You're so much freer. You literally, I mean, I've always said to people when they say, oh, we're going to go traveling, I'm like, who's we? Don't ever go traveling with someone, because that is a completely different experience. It's not the same thing.
Yes.
You don't want to be like, oh, I'm going to wake up at this time tomorrow and we have to go see this and you have to, no, you go, you travel, you meet people. Like when I was traveling, we met people in Brazil. I'd hang around with them. They were like, oh, we're going to the next country with you. And I was like, yeah, cool, I'll see you there, kind of thing. And I just never, that's it. You get to pick and choose who you want to be your friends and who you want to hang around with, what you want to do. And then you just move on to the next one.
I agree.
So when you went from Brazil, you came here, started up.
I came back to Dubai and got a job in Abu Dhabi. So I actually lived in Abu Dhabi for, I think it was something like 4 years. And then after that, when I left consulting, because when I came back, I went into consulting, but I did change management, which is very people focused, which then got me into coaching, etc. And then one day I just decided to start my own company, and I thought it would be better to live in Dubai. So I just moved back to Dubai.
You started your company. So when you started your company, what is it that you wanted to do with people? What was
Coaching.
it? But was it more one-on-one coaching, or was it more kind of like corporate, or
Both.
both?
So I've done, I mean, I don't really know what the percentage is, but I would say in the last year since COVID started, it's been more one-on-one coaching, because there's been no leadership facilitation. There has been online. I haven't done much of it online, but I mean, it's starting now,
That's what I've started to notice, is that a lot of people, even people that are doing corporate, they're starting, I have a couple of friends that they're starting to move more to families and stuff like that, which they never thought they would do.
Families meaning what, to coach them?
Family coaching, yeah,
Oh,
families
okay.
in general and that kind of stuff, and
I see.
people where usually they do big corporate events and these kind of things, but now they're like, it's a completely different thing. It's a nice change to actually be working with people individually and so many different, because when you're doing corporate, right, it's just like you're kind of doing not a blanket, but it's kind of like a more take from it what you will, people. This is the way, as opposed to, you're with these people and you know so much more about them individually.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can also consider that corporate too, because I do a lot of executive coaching. So I coach, I coach people in the last year at companies like HSBC Bank and Roche Pharmaceuticals, but I coach them one-on-one, right? And what I find is that there's a nice thing and a drawback about corporate coaching. The nice thing is it's there for you. The company knows what the teams need, and then you coach people individually. But there's also a lot of, I don't want to call it bureaucracy, but red tape to get contracts and everything. So that's why coaching individuals is super nice, because if one person decides tomorrow, I want you to coach me, boom, you just coach them. You don't have to go through this entire 2-month process to get them.
But how do you ever get cases where, just like you said, it's not a person who decides tomorrow I want to be coached, but a person who's told they're going to be coached, like in corporate kind of things? Do you find them quite resistant? Do you find them quite...
That's the worst thing.
Yeah.
No, I dislike coaching people who don't want to be coached. And we tell companies, if the person doesn't want to be coached, he should not be coached. Because if they do, they come into the session and they're not fully invested, right? So you want people who are fully invested, and you want people who want to transform. So, I was saying about transformation expert before. What my passion is within coaching, because just like every field in the world, there's just so many things you can do, right? What my passion is actually behavioral change. So I want people who want to change, they know they want to change, and they're willing to invest and put in the time. And then, I use elements of neuroscience and psychology and hypnotherapy and NLP. You combine this stuff together and you can do really, really powerful things with people.
Which kind of elements do you use when you're doing that kind of stuff?
Out of all that I mentioned?
Yeah. All of them. Let's get into it, bro.
All of them. Yeah. So what I like to say that I dance in the moment. It's not a recipe that you just say, okay, I'm gonna start with A, then B, then C, then D. You have to go into it and hear what the person has to say, and then they will say something, and it will trigger something in you where you say, oh, I know something will work for them.
Yeah. I know what you need next. You need this.
Like I'll give you an example. 2 days ago, I coached an executive, and this executive had a resistance to. I can tell you because I've asked her permission just to say it. This person had a resistance to speak up in meetings with senior people. So right away I thought to myself, okay, resistance, speak up to people. She's obviously educated and confident and everything, but there's something inside her that's holding her back. And I thought about a psychology framework. It's called Immunity to Change. It's a book. I'm plugging in a book for you in case you're watching.
Plug coming here.
It's not my book. It's Dr. Robert Keegan. He's a Harvard PhD in psychology, and I studied this with him, right? So this book called Immunity to Change, there's something called an immunity map. And basically, I took this client through this over a period of 2 or 3 coaching sessions, which is about 2-3 hours. And the insight that comes out of it is so powerful, and that's what I really love. I like this transformation, and I do it for my clients. And as you know, because we got introduced by a common friend who saw my own transformation, I like to be congruent in what I do. So not only am I doing transformation for my own clients, but I like to do it for myself too, you know.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So when you do a transformation, you put on, or you lost a lot of weight, right?
Oh yeah, recently.
So this was him before. You can see this picture that's popping up at the screen.
Oh, we're putting a picture?
Not this.
Oh, this one.
This up here. How did you get from that to this?
So you know what? I would probably say since I was 20 years old, right? I have always fluctuated up and down in my life, and I've never been consistent with training. And you know, I think like 99% of the people in the world, we just want to be in the best shape we can possibly be. And for me, it just never worked out. Sometimes I'd be in great shape. Sometimes, well, I thought it was great until now. Sometimes I'd be in good shape. Sometimes I'd be in very bad shape. The most I ever weighed, I think 3 years ago in Abu Dhabi, was 116 kilos. And I think about 9 months ago, I had gone down a bit and I was maybe 109. I forgot what it was exactly. And my sister, who's a medical doctor, told me, I did a blood test and I had very high cholesterol. And she said to me, you're 47 years old. I just turned 47. She said, you're 47 years old. And at the time I was 46. She said, if you can't lower your cholesterol on your own, you will take pills for the rest of your life. This really like struck me because
you were like, pills? What kind of music's going to be playing in the background? Because some pills are going to be cool to take. If you're telling me I'm going to be on ecstasy for the rest of my life, what's the problem here?
Not in this country.
Definitely not in Dubai or any of the surrounding regions in the UAE.
Exactly. So this, you know, in my head, I think I'm always 20 years old. So I'm like 47, about to hit 50, and I'm like, damn, you know, like reality sets in. So I'm really anti-pills and anti all this stuff. And I said, you know, you're a coach, you're a mindset coach, a transformation coach, just undergo your own transformation. On top of that, another thing that really triggered me to start this transformation was I was coaching a client whose goal was that she wanted to become in the best peak shape of her life. So I was like, okay, this is like a no-brainer. Like the stars are aligned, it's meant for me to do. So I started getting coached by somebody else, and I underwent hypnosis. And I got a personal trainer. So this personal trainer, I never see him. It's all over WhatsApp. He lives in Dubai, but it's all over WhatsApp. He sends me an eating plan and a training plan, and I just follow it, right? The best thing, you can't generalize for everybody, but for me, the best thing in the world is not to think. I wake up in the morning, I know what to do, I know what I need to eat, and I just follow it. Anyways, fast forward 9 months later, for the first time I was consistent due to this guidance and also the hypnosis and also the coaching that I underwent and everything. And I lost about, I think it was, 22, 25 kilos, something like this. But what was crazy is that my waist had gone down from 105 to 81 centimeters, which for my imperial friends is something like 41 to 32 inches, right?
It's a lot.
It's an enormous amount of weight. And something that I learned, I learned like these little things along the way, which is about 4 or 5 months ago, I started hiking. The first time I went hiking, I needed to go hiking with somebody because I didn't know how to hike, where to hike. How about if I get lost? How about if I die of dehydration, you know? At the beginning, I didn't know what to do. But then slowly, I learned about the apps. I learned about, you know, the guidance, GPS, places, all this kind of stuff. And then I felt comfortable to start hiking by myself. So in the last 3 months, I've been going to Ras Al Khaimah, which is a really huge investment.
Hike there,
yeah, I go and hike from Wadi Galila, which is the bottom of Jebel Jais, to the top of Jebel Jais, which takes me now 5.5 hours to do. So it's a really big investment. It's like 2 hours to go, 2 hours to come back. And I do this like some people just walk in front at the park. Because the thing is, I just got into this habit now of, I have this goal, I have this goal, I have to go this goal. So last week was, I'm so proud of this, I'll talk about it. Last week was something that bodybuilders call peak week.
Peak week, yeah.
And my trainer is a competitive bodybuilder. So I went through peak week. First day, drank 14 liters of water.
Yeah.
14.
Yeah, I know. I know this all too well.
You know it.
Before shoots and stuff like that, you do that.
Yes.
You know, and then you slowly bring it down every day, and then because your body basically is like a camel. So if you're not giving it any water, it's going to store water because it's going to be like, well, this guy's not giving me anything, so I'm going to save it. Same with food.
Yes,
you know, if you eat, some people say, yeah, well, I only eat once a day. I'm like, that's the worst thing you can do because I come from a fitness background. That was my job for 20 years. And I keep telling people, eat. We had this conversation yesterday. I was telling you have to eat every 3 hours. Just keep it going. Keep your metabolism going.
Small meals.
your body's just like, well, I need to get rid of this water because he's
Yeah.
drinking 14 liters of water.
Exactly.
So then the next day and the next day, and then you go down to
10.
8, 12, 10, 8, and then but your body's still going, here's 14 liters of water. So it get rid
Exactly.
of all the excess stuff and everything
Yeah.
out, and then you're just like, you wake up one morning, you're like, ooh, I'm shredded. Like,
I went down to 10% body fat
Nice.
last Friday.
nice.
I think I'm
Yeah.
back up to 25 now. I'm joking.
No, you won't get there all.
No, I'm joking. So I went
Yeah.
to 10, and then after that, and then there's a quote that I really, really love that I always put up on my social media, which is, good is the enemy of great. So again, my whole life, I've always said, I'm good.
Hmm.
Look at me. I'm a healthy guy. I'm an educated guy. I have a good career. I travel the world. I'm good, right? But now I say to myself, why just be good?
Yeah.
Be great. So I already spoke to my trainer and told him my next goal, which is my 12 to 15 month goal, is to put on 10 kilos of muscle. Quite hard when you're 47 years
Very-
old, right?
very hard.
I don't have that kind of testosterone that
Mm.
you have when you're 20.
But you can get it from a man I know around the corner, no problem.
I
Yeah.
will not do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
needed for me
Yeah.
because I'm not like,
It's no
not,
point. You're not
there's
competing.
no
You're not
point.
doing anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's my goal now. So I keep having these goals, and I told my wife, I said, before I'm 50, I will be on the cover of a Men's Health Fitness magazine.
Nice.
Why? Because in my mind, I just think to myself, if you don't have these huge goals, then you don't achieve it, right?
It's
You
very
need
important.
Big goals.
Goal setting is very important, and it's always a case of if you're in reach of your goals, you need to create another goal because
Yes.
it's not, and you should never complete your goals without the next goal being set as well, because then that gives you that time to just be like,
Yes.
and then before you know it, you'll be like, and then you're like, oh,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
happened there?
Yeah,
and then you'll be
exactly.
like, but I just completed it, and you're like, that was 4 weeks ago, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you tell yourself, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
See, I do the same thing, and I did I mean, I've always been in shape because I've always been, from a sport background or doing something professionally, a sport or something. But I was always like, nah. I want to be like, okay, I'm now going to be 40. I want to look better than 20-year-olds, like on the beach.
Yeah.
So every now and then I'll be like, I'll do a 2-week shred, and I'll just be like,
Yeah,
let's go.
exactly.
And then, then I'll come back again. And then about 4 weeks later, I'll just look at myself. I'll be like, nah, not good enough. Let's do it
funny,
again.
It's funny you say about the 20-year-olds
Yeah.
because my friends who are my age,
Mm.
I don't really, I'm not in competition with anyone. I don't really care what other
Yeah.
people do. I care about what I do.
Mm.
But there is an element of me that does like to think that I can be as good as a 20-year-old in sports.
It's very important
You know?
because I was saying the same thing on a previous podcast. I had Fadi Al Khatib, and he's a beast. I mean, he's in the 40s and he looks great. And it also comes. People don't understand when you have kids. It's so important to be a role model to them and to be fit and everything, not just to look fit,
Yes.
but there's nothing like, my eldest is 19 years old, and when I used to pick him up from school, I used to play football with his friends. I used to do, backflips and all of that stuff, and they would be like, dude, your brother's weird, dude. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not my brother, it's my dad.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's how it's got to be. You've got to
Yes.
be lively because as you get old, it's not going to be easy to keep up with them.
I know.
It's going to become harder and harder and harder. You need to actually purposely work on that to be in a position where you're fit enough to be, crawling and running and jumping around. And there's nothing worse than a dad who's just sitting there while their kids are playing.
I agree.
I mean, it's one thing if they're 2-3 years old and they're you're not going to swing with them all close. There's only so much sand you can eat as an adult before it actually starts to get annoying, but if they're older and you can wrestle with them and all that stuff, like I do jiu-jitsu with my 3-year-olds and stuff like that.
No,
They have
that's
no
good.
idea what jiu-jitsu is, but they know that when I shout jiu-jitsu, one of them is going to be under me on the floor, and then they're going to have to roll out, or they're going to have to do shrimp out or do something like that.
Exactly.
I think it's very important, and people lack that
Yeah.
the understanding of how important it is, because
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're not a parent, health is the most important thing. Because I noticed as I got older, I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel it now. I'm starting to feel it. But because I put myself in a position where I was so much ahead and advanced,
Yes.
I started to feel it later than my friends.
Yes.
So where my other friends would have started to feel it, I would have felt it maybe 4 or 5 years later, the same feeling. So yeah, I think it's so important, dude. And credit to you
It is.
and keep it going, dude.
You make a very interesting point that I'll tie back to
Yeah, go for it.
my
Let's do it.
field, which is automatic behavior patterns. Most of your automatic behavior patterns, which is what you do on autopilot,
Mhm.
right? Which is what hypnotherapy tries to, it tries to reach out to your subconscious to feed it better
Mhm.
information and intentions and all that. It comes from your childhood, right? So if you are doing this stuff with your children, right? If you are spending time with them, quality time with them, if you are doing sports with them, if they see you doing sports, it's all these kind of things that shape them. So for my case, for example, my dad, knock on wood, is 84 years old right now, I think, 84. He has been an athlete his whole life. So I grew up with that, seeing my dad playing squash, you know, playing field hockey, doing all these
If
things.
he's
And
Egyptian, he was playing squish.
squish.
Yeah.
And my dad actually, most recently, the most crazy recent thing I've seen him do is, I think he was 79 or 80, and we went to go play football together. So, you know, you see this and you're like,
Yeah.
if you can do it, I can do it, right? But if you are raised in a family where, you know, your parents are a bit lethargic, or you're around friends who are like this and everything, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you are going to develop these patterns in your head where you don't have this kind of role model, let's call it. And it's important not only for sports, we're talking a lot about sports, but for education. For
I was just about to say the same thing, because here's another thing. Okay, let your children be educated and let them be ahead of their class, that's fine or whatever, but don't overdo it, because there is nothing more unsocial and socially awkward than a kid that is just focused on education. You put them in the real life and they don't know how to have a conversation with another person.
Well, that was me when I was young.
Yeah, you know, it's just like educate, study. They finish, they go into a bar and they're like, hey, how you doing? And they're like...
Actually, that was me when I was young. My dad was like a militant with studying. And up until the age of 17, I was not as emotional intelligent and had very good social skills.
Very socially
But
awkward.
I learned all that after the age of 17. So I was a bit geeky and I was.
No,
this
I
kind
think
of
it's
guy.
really important that there's. I think the word balance is the most important thing.
Yes.
Make sure you balance a lot of stuff out and stuff. You know, with that. Let's talk about NLP, because I love NLP, and the funny thing. I mean, the greatest quote I can kind of put forward, which to me describes NLP, is, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was to convince everyone that he didn't exist. And that's very tied up with NLP, because so many people are getting nippled or NLP'd. Nippled, that's the new NLP word. So many people are getting nippled and they have no idea of the constant NLP that's happening in advertising, in TV, in billboards, in everything. So let's talk about that, the dangers of it, the pros of it, how you see the evolution of NLP.
So in terms of the commercials and everything, I think it's more hypnotherapy, but hypnotherapy is learned within NLP, right? So for people who don't know what NLP is basically, it's a way to influence brain behavior using different communication patterns, language and other communication patterns, to be able to form better behaviors, right? So you hear a lot of different people talking about NLP, and they'll say things like, you can, you know, imitate success, right? Success leaves clues, you know? So what NLP really is, because a lot of people hype it up and they don't really understand it, NLP is just basically a series of techniques that you can use to do what I just said, to reprogram your mind to have better behavior. So to give an analogy, right? If you are on a computer and you are typing on Microsoft Word and you write something on a piece of paper, on a sheet, and whatever you call it, on a Word document, let's say, right? You look at it and it's there. But if you want to, you can erase it. You can just delete, and you can rewrite it. So wouldn't it be so cool if you can do that with your brain? And that's what NLP is for me about, right? Some people will say it's something different for them. But for me, it's about, you can't change your past, but you can change the way you think about your past. So Richard Bandler, who's the founder of NLP, who I studied with, he always says that every single thing in life starts with a thought and an image in your mind, right? So let's take example. Well, we talk so much about training. Let's talk about training again. Let's take example. You go home, you sit down on your sofa, and someone tells you, let's go to the gym. You might, when you hear the words, let's go to the gym, you might have a pattern in your mind where you think, there's an image in your mind where you're like, oh God. And then you picture a bowl of popcorn, you picture a Netflix movie and all this stuff. Well, if you picture all this stuff in your mind, then you are gearing you up for not success, right? You want to be geared towards success. So that image in your mind is not helping you out. So with an NLP practitioner, you can do like for
reprogram.
You can do, in this case, you can do something called a swish pattern, right? Which is you take one picture, you take the other picture. The picture is huge of you watching Netflix and being a slob. The picture is really, really small of you looking in the mirror, feeling pumped and energized and wanting to go to the gym. And there's a technique where you just swish. It's called swish because you swish it. And then you're basically reprogramming your mind to see a different image when somebody says, hey, let's go to the gym. This is also related to something called anchoring, right? So you know what anchoring is?
You're
It's
gonna
like-
tell?
Okay, so
There's a lot
anchoring
of
is.
people. You're not just talking to me.
Do you know what anchoring
Yeah.
is? So basically, there's an experiment called Pavlov's dog or something
Pavlov's
like
dog, yeah.
this. What it is that a dog, you bring a dog food, he salivates, right? If you don't bring a dog food, he doesn't salivate. Eventually, if you ring a bell every time you bring food, he will salivate.
Yeah.
And then one day you don't
You
bring
don't bring
food,
food,
but
he'll
you ring
still
the bell,
salivate.
he'll salivate.
Yeah.
It's because the dog now has a
It's
neurological
has
link.
association.
Exactly, a neurological link or an association to the bell. So you can create these kind of anchors in your brain, so that when you hear the word, "Hey, let's go to the gym," you think differently about it. You see a different picture, you think differently, and you can basically look at the process. There is something really beautiful that Richard Bandler used to say that I love telling my clients, which is, if a client comes up to you and says, "I'm depressed," you ask the client, "Well, how do you do depression?" And they're like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And then you're like, "How do you do it? Explain the process to me." So right there, you see that that's the beginning of something that's related to a computer. There's a process, you enter it, whatever, an outcome comes out. So you're trying to break down this process, right? And if a person says, no, there's no process, I'm just depressed, then you say, well, are you depressed 24 hours a day? Have you never been happy in your life? And the person's like, no, I have been happy in my life. Okay, so then you're not depressed. You just go through depression once in a while. So tell me how you do it. Once you can break this down, then you can start realizing what the pattern is, and then take a strategy of something that they're really good at, and then overlay that strategy, and they learn from it. You know, one cool thing that I learned when I was doing NLP is there's something called modalities, which is like your 5 senses. Human beings can only experience the outside world through one of 5 senses: sight, smelling. You know the 5 senses, of course, right?
Farts. Yeah.
Exactly, that's true. That's the sixth. That's the
That's
sixth
the
sense.
sixth sense.
So basically, who would have thought that you can actually break down each one into something different? So for example, if I ask somebody, if you and me are both thinking about something, which is, let's say, collecting comics, we're both going to have an image coming up in our minds. Now I can ask you, what do you see? And you can tell me, oh, I see, you don't even have to tell me what it is.
Yeah.
You don't have to say, I see a comic book. What do you see? I see something, it's big, it's in front of me, it's moving, it's still, it's panoramic, I'm associated, I'm in it, I'm not in it. And you can start breaking this down into submodalities, right? Once you break this down into submodalities, you can relate this to computers and think like zeros and ones, programming, and then you can do so much to manipulate it. So that's what NLP is. NLP, it's not just hypnotherapy. It's using words, nonverbal gestures, everything to reprogram the way people think and have them produce better behaviors. So I don't do solely NLP sessions. Some people do that as a profession, but once again, I dance in the moment. When I'm in a session, if somebody says something and I'm like, oh, I know a good NLP technique that would help them, boom, I introduce it.
No, I totally understand, because I've been switching for a long time. Because if you sat down and you said to me, dude, let's go to the gym, initially I'd just be like, I've been twice already today, but fuck it, let's go, man. Why not? Let's do it. But it's amazing what you say. I mean, I'm going to get back to the NLP, because you spoke a lot of good about NLP, and I know there's a dark side to everything. And I feel like, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like it can be used for bad.
Technically it can.
Because it is a way to sell. It is a big part of selling stuff, right? So you can kind of aim people to something that they weren't originally going for.
Well, perfect example is pharmaceutical commercials on TV.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a pharmaceutical commercial?
Well,
All the time, right? So what do you see in pharmaceutical commercials? People dancing in the wind, in the pastures. It's such a beautiful day. It's sunny. The sun is beaming on them. And then while all this is happening and you're in trance,
get your pill.
you hear the person saying, side effects may include and there's a beautiful tonality of their voice and everything, and this is all getting you in trance and using it against you. Now of course it's not something I don't know, it's not something horrible where they're trying to put you in trance to kill someone, and this by the way does not exist, right? Putting somebody in trance and getting them to do something bad or to harm themselves, I don't believe this is possible, because the subconscious mind, one of the primary objectives of it is to keep you safe.
Survival.
So all these things that you see on stage, you're going to forget your name, you're going to do this, you're going to quack.
So you think none of that exists? I was really hoping we could do something to Walid today.
I personally don't think that it exists. I think that I think that there are people who are suggestible, if
very
that's a word.
Suggestible,
And maybe you can get them to do something that you want them to do, but maybe it's because they really wanted to do it. But if you are a strong-willed individual, I don't think anyone can hypnotize you to do something really bad. Sure, they can hypnotize you to go and buy the Apple product, to go buy that pharmaceutical drug, whatever it is. Yeah, over time you can get all these suggestions to make you do things, but not to do something that will harm you.
Apparently there's tests that you can do. Do you know about the test about the looking up at the ceiling to see if somebody's suggestible or not? So they look up, and then when they bring their eyes down, if their eyes blink a lot, apparently that they're supposed to be very suggestible, as opposed to somebody who doesn't.
No, this I've never heard.
Look up at the ceiling and give me your wallet. Let's test it.
So I do your wallet.
See if it works. No, what you were saying about imaging is really important as well, because have you ever noticed that people, they build images of their past, like you were talking about, in their head, and then you'll meet someone maybe 10 years after you haven't spoken to them, you'll have an argument, and then you'll be like, well, no, that's not why I was arguing with you, bro. That's not how it happened in my head. And then two people have developed their own kind of codes for that situation that happened, and they're completely different, and both of you probably aren't living either of the right reality. So when you kind of put something in your head, you can really kind of make it kind of limit you to so many things, right? So
it's beautiful that you say this, because let me tell you how the mind works according to NLP, right? This is the NLP what is it called again? Anyways, let me just tell you how it works. So basically, there is no such thing as reality, right? What there is there's the external world, right? But in the external world, what you're doing when you're looking at the external world is you're perceiving something, right? So like we said before, you have 5 senses and you perceive information, right? Now the problem is that when you perceive information through your 5 senses, there is only a certain number of, let's talk computer terms, right? Terabytes, gigabytes, call it whatever you want. Your brain can only process so much. So that means that what you need to do to be able to make sense of the world, and also to not kill yourself with all this processing in your mind, is 3 things, according to NLP and according to this theory, right? You have to delete information, you have to distort information, and you have to generalize information. So based on our biases, on our neurological filters that we've developed over the course of our lives, which have to do with our culture, our upbringing, where we've lived, everything, right? You are basically a very unique individual who is processing information different from anyone else. So what happens is you go through this delete, distort, generalize, and then what you are perceiving is an opinion.
It's what's left.
Yes, it's not fact anymore, it's an opinion. And what happens is, like, this game called Broken Telephone or Chinese Whispers?
Yeah, Chinese Whispers, when it goes from one to the other,
Right, so this is the way the mind works. It's basically going inside, you filter it all, and then you store it as a memory. But then when you want to bring that memory back and communicate it out, you're then going all the way back. And what do? You're not. It's not going to come out the same way that it came in. So there's an amazing quote, you'll realize that I just love quotes so much, that says, where there is perception, there is deception. And if you want to be a spiritually intelligent person, and you want to be able to really understand people and have great communication skills, you have to be prepared to tell yourself that I'm probably wrong. If you can go into every situation in your life, which is probably impossible, but if you can go into every situation in life and say to yourself, maybe I'm wrong, that means that you're not going in to argue your point, which is what all humans want to do. They want to be right, they want to look good, it's an ego thing. You're going to go in there to understand, and that will make you a completely different person.
Yeah, miles behind, a bit ahead of other people. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the mind is so amazing, and it's so complex, and even things like we were talking about. So there's been situations where they've done tests on people where, they've let them see something that's happening in front of them, but then they've done the same thing under duress. So they're seeing the same thing, but noises are happening. There's a bird flying in front of their face, somebody's pinching their ass, and then they look at the recollection after, and what did you remember then, and what did you remember this time? And they were just showing that people, when so many other things and distractions were happening, kind of made up a lot of what they were seeing, which then they now say that a lot of these people who are witnesses, that they're unreliable, because they're in situations, there's gunshots going off, there's this going off, and what they've developed in their head isn't necessarily what happened. It's just what their panic mode brain decided to filter out, like you said,
or focus
take it
on.
out. Yeah, exactly. Or focus on.
Not only just filter out, but focus on. And when you focus on something, everything else is just gone. Yeah. There's a beautiful video on YouTube, I don't know what it would be called, but you can look it up, where they're passing a ball on the video, right? Like they're just bouncing balls to each other. These kids are adults, I don't know what they are. And then all of a sudden it says, count the number of bounces. You count all the bounces, and at the end of the video it says, did you see the gorilla walk right through the screen? And you're like, what gorilla? You rewind it, and all of a sudden there's a gorilla well, I think it's a costume.
Yeah.
A guy's just walking right through, and you didn't even see the gorilla.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example.
Yeah, you can. It's. I think now we're in a much better state to be aware of these things that are happening and the way people work with the mind and manipulate things and that. Because back in the day, can you imagine how easy it was for people to manipulate people? Because there wasn't so much kind of like advancements and it's not just everywhere now. People are watching stuff on YouTube.
Still easy.
Oh yeah, now it's easy, but
No, it's still easy because most people are unaware of this information.
Yeah. Well, not anymore because they're watching Jibber with Jabber, bringing you the best information since 1991. So what about languages made you kind of want to learn languages? Because you want to learn 10 by the time you're 50, right?
10, yes.
10.
I think I'm at 8.
You're on 8.
Yeah. I mean, I speak 8. When people ask me, are they fluent?
Yeah.
I tell them, well, it's not like I could say 5 sentences. If I could go to a country and have a conversation with someone for half an hour, right? Or 1 hour or whatever it is, irrespective of how good my grammar is or whatever, I say I speak that language. So I'm at 8.
Okay,
right?
nice.
I think that the language thing started when I was young. I was born in French Canada, so Montreal is
Quebec?
the French.
Oh, Montreal.
Well, Montreal is in the province of Quebec, so automatically I speak French and English just from the geography.
Yeah.
My mother spoke to me in Greek my entire life. My father never spoke to me in Arabic, and every time I begged him to speak Arabic to me, he would tell me "fil mishmish" for all the Egyptian who I understand this. So basically, I told you until I was 17, I was a bit of an introvert. I was a geek and all this. But once I started socializing with people, I really, really enjoyed communication, and I always tell people that I can speak to a 3-year-old child, somebody working on the streets, or the Queen of England. I can just speak to anybody, and I always feel confident because I like talking to people. But then I started traveling. I traveled to Panama for work. Then I traveled, I told you, to Germany. Every time I travel somewhere, I think it's the coolest thing in the world, and you can impact people so much when you could speak their mother tongue. So again,
And they love it.
they love it, and the thing is that it became my identity. So I went to Panama, I learned Spanish in the streets of Panama over some months. I went to Germany, I was studying German, and I would speak it every single day. I was studying in a very small village. I came to Dubai. Unfortunately, I'm not in an Arabic country. I call this an English-speaking country in the Middle East, right? But I did learn it through my Egyptian friends and everything, so I can get by. It's probably one of my worst languages. And then after that, I moved to Brazil, so Portuguese and that. So in the last year, we underwent COVID, and everybody was home. And I said, well, if I don't have to drive to see all these clients and everything, then what I should do is I should learn a language online. So I studied Russian for the last year.
Nice.
And I had a tutor who lived in St. Petersburg, and me and her used to speak online for 3 times a week. So that's supposed to end in July. And I have this crazy plan in August, which I'm still negotiating with my wife, which is I want to go to Russia alone in the month of August and spend the entire month just going through the Trans-Siberian Railway all through the entire country and stopping at various towns and cities and just refusing to speaking to anybody in English.
That's the best way to learn. I mean, I've always said to people, if you want to learn a language, go to the country, have no plans, have no friends. Don't find English people to hang around with, because that's the same. A lot of the languages that I learned was just going somewhere randomly and then and doing it. And I mean, I've said this before on one of my previous podcasts, but I'll say it again. The reason that language fascinates me is because when you speak another language, you have a different soul. It's not that you're not the same person. The person you speak when you're Spanish, or the person when you're Brasileiro, is completely different.
It is.
You laugh about different things. You find different things funny. You act a different way. Your body movements are different.
True.
It's you're a completely different person. So you tend to develop different ideas and people in your head, because I'm sure that the David of Brazil is not the same David of Russia.
I have an incredible story. I have a friend of mine who he's my childhood friend. He's like my twin. We're born on the same month, same day, same year. I moved to Brazil, and all my friends told me, we want to come see you in Rio, and I forbid it. I said, if you cannot speak fluent Portuguese, you're not allowed to come visit me. After, I don't know, 3-4 months of speaking Portuguese 24 hours a day, my Portuguese is really quite kick-ass, right? So I told my friends, okay, now you can come visit me. And this guy came to visit me, and he tells the story to everybody, and he says, I landed in the airport, I saw my friend David, I gave him a hug, and we went into a taxi, and all of a sudden my friend started speaking fluent Portuguese, and with all the jeito and the ginga and all this, like, the way Brazilians move and talk. And he's like, I don't even know this guy. I've known him for like 30 years, but he's unrecognizable.
Because you're a different person. You're not the same. And again, glad that you learned in Panama the Spanish, because the Spanish of South America so much more beautiful than
Beautiful.
the Russian of Spain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so much more melodic. There's so many more variations to it. It's so much more. I don't know. It just flows so much more.
Yeah.
Spanish. I mean, I have nothing against any language, but Spanish is very, very raw, very fast as well.
Yeah.
And
Spanish
very-
from Spain. you
Yeah,
mean.
from Spain.
Yeah. It's still melodic. It's not like Portuguese.
But not like
not like South
a
America.
not like a Colombian Spain
No.
or a Colombian Spanish or a Mexican
No,
Spanish.
but it's still
completely
it's more melodic than Portuguese,
from Portugal. Yeah,
That is.
Portuguese from Portugal is. So many people I've seen where people say to me, "Oh, they're Russians." I'm like, "No, they're not. They're Portuguese."
Yeah, exactly.
Because obviously because
Yeah.
they have the same words.
Yeah.
And that, but languages are amazing. And where did you get when you were in Kenya? Did you learn any Swahili?
No, I just learned how to say a couple of sentences. I remember I used to tell my driver something like "Mimi nataka kuona simba na chui," which means I want to go and see lions and cheetahs.
Yeah.
But no, this.
But you obviously learned the normal, the mambo poa, abari, and all of these.
But that's never a language that I tell people I speak. But
Yeah.
I have a funny Kenya story. You've been to
Of
Kenya?
course. No. I go to Zanzibar a lot.
Okay,
So
that's
obviously they speak,
Tanzania.
Tanzania.
But
They
same
speak Swahili
language.
there, yeah.
My funny Kenya story that people love to hear is I went to Kenya and I went to the Nairobi market. So I walk around. It's my first time I think it was my first time in Africa. I don't consider Egypt Africa. That's like North Africa. So I walked around the market and, I'm like, oh, these guys are going to rip me off royally on everything I want to buy. So I said, I'm trying to think of an innovative way to save money. And I said, I got it. So I went up to this one vendor and I said, how much for this? And I forgot. Let's say he said it was $3. I told him, I'm going to give you $20 for this. How does that sound? He's like, yeah, that sounds good. I go, there's a catch. He goes, what's the catch? I go, take 10 minutes with me, walk around with me in the entire market and tell me how much everything costs.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, with pleasure. Give him the $20. He took me all around the entire market. And then after that, I went to go buy paintings, a chess set, this, that, whatever. I would negotiate them down to like the last penny. And they'd look at me and say, man, this guy's a Muzungu.
Yeah,
and
this Muzungu,
he knows what he's talking about, And they would tell me, they would look at me and I would tell them, Mimi Muzungu, which is, I'm not a foreigner. And they're like, I'm African like you. They're like, what do you mean African? Where are you from?
I always say to
I'm
them,
Egyptian.
I said, don't give me this Muzungu stuff before I start. Because Muzungu actually means white ghost, right?
White ghost?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that. I thought it just meant white person.
Muzungu is like white devil.
The devil.
Yeah. So I'm the same. I actually like haggling so much. So much.
It's a Middle Eastern blood.
No, dude, I love this stuff. Like to the point where my wife, in the beginning, she was like, "This is embarrassing." Like, you're haggling over 20 cents.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not the point. It's the victory I'm after. It's not about the money. Sometimes I haggle and I still pay them more, but I just want you to tell me I can have it for this price.
Yes.
I used to do the same thing even when I was in Khan Khalili in Egypt and all that stuff. So they don't know that I speak Arabic. I look like I'm, Albanian or from somewhere. I could be from different places.
You could pass for Levant.
I can to be for different places. Yeah. So, but if I speak Egyptian, because I was raised there, my stepfather was Egyptian. I speak. يعني مصري شوارع يعني proper like street Egypt, like it's a guy who's selling you mangoes in the street. So I'd go in there and I'd just be like haggling with them in English. I'd be like, oh no, but you can give me a better price than that, and how much is this stick? Oh, this stick, my friend, is from the Pharaohs and blah blah blah. And then I'd wait till the end and I'd be like, مش عيب عليك كده? And he'd be like, huh? And their face, they're almost like, oh, and I'd be like, والله حرام عليك يا باشا. And he'd be like, all right, cool, you're one of us, take this.
Then they give you the Egyptian price.
Dude, I have this thing where, this is a funny story and my wife still laughs at it. So if you go to my house, I have a drawer, okay? When you open this drawer, it's full of name tags, okay? So name tags from people in the mall, in all of these places.
Like with company names on it?
Their company and their name tag.
Okay.
So if it gets to the point that I can't get a discount, or get the price I want, I'm saying, well, I'm not buying this unless you give me your name tag.
Oh, we gotta go shopping.
Yeah, dude. So I've got like Muhammad's, Abdullah's, I've got Sam's, I've got like all the names you could think of. There's like so many name tags there because I'm like, I refuse to leave without taking something from your soul, bro. I want something. Somebody has to get in trouble with this purchase. There is no way. I've been to places and I've bought, like haggled in Zara, and my wife's like, bro, this is Zara. You're not getting a discount. I'm like, I'm getting a discount.
Like, hold on, wait, I got the Zara badge.
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting something free. I love haggling. And also it's the same thing with the whole traveling and that kind of thing. It's a sport.
Yeah.
Shake my hand, my friend. Shake my hand. Haggling is a sport. Bro. It is. It
should be in the Olympics.
Right?
Yeah,
it should be. Could you imagine like all these Arabs and different people from different countries? Like they have one person in front of them and they're like, They're all trying to haggle the thing down.
I agree.
That's amazing. So you've been doing stuff with a lot of celebrities as well, right?
No, I don't do
Actors?
things with celebrities, but I always tell people that for some reason the universe brings celebrities around me.
Ah, so you don't work with them.
No, not yet.
Ah. Well, like,
Maybe in the future.
I guess why the universe
Jibber with Jabber.
brought me to you. You know, this is like the universe is
Jibber
working.
with Jabber, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So you end up being around a lot of celebrities, but you never worked with any specifically.
Honestly, I don't know. One of my friends told me, he goes, I think that the universe is trying to tell you that you
That
are
you should.
destined to become a celebrity because you're always
Mm.
around them. Like, I can give you a couple of different stories.
Mm.
I was sitting in a sushi restaurant in Rio de Janeiro having sushi with my friend, and all of a sudden I hear people whispering and pointing at me and everything, and I'm looking and I'm like, they probably think I'm someone famous. I
Mm.
have no clue. They keep looking and pointing at me and everything, and then I look this way and I'm like, oh, Shakira is sitting right beside
Oh,
me.
no way. Yeah.
So I'm telling you, that always happens to me, but I never talk to them, right?
Yeah.
Or like, for example, I was at a bar in Montreal. A friend of mine is on the phone and he's like, yeah, come, it's going to be a great night. Come, yeah, it'll be great. He hangs up and gets all these vodka bottle, champagne bottle, this, that, whatever. And I'm like, who's coming here? He goes, you'll see. I'm like, you'll see means I know the person. He goes, you'll see. Who shows up to our table? Jamie Foxx.
Nice.
Like, just like random stuff. Or, do you like football?
Love football.
Okay. I'm from Canada, don't know a thing
Wait, what are we
football.
talking about? Are we talking about football, which is football?
No, I'm talking about soccer football.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
You like soccer football?
Yes, because I thought
So-
you were going to be like football. We're going to go for a whole story, and then he's going to be like, yeah, and it was
no, not NFL.
yeah, and tell me
No,
some
no.
American football. I'd be like,
No.
It's not football, yeah.
Well, one time I was sitting at, do you remember 360, the bar at Jumeirah Beach Hotel?
oh yes, the round.
Yeah, the round one.
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I get a call from my friend and he says, yeah, you know, I'm going to come there with some friends. Are you there? Is it good? I'm like, yeah, it's good. He goes, okay, you have a table? I'm like, yeah, we're just sitting at a table. Come. He shows up and there's 15 guys behind him. And I'm like, I thought he was going to come with one or two people.
Mm.
So I'm looking at all these guys and I have no clue who they are. And I look at my friend, I go, who are these people? He says, it's the AC Milan football team. Why are you embarrassing me?
Mm.
And so we hung out with all these guys. And this is a while back.
Yeah.
Back in the Dida, Kaká
Yeah, yeah,
days,
yeah.
Gida, which is
Yeah.
spelled Dida, Kaká, I don't know, Ronaldo, all these
Yeah.
guys. And I was just looking at them going, guys, I really apologize, but I don't know who any of you guys are. And because I said that, they loved me.
Yeah, yeah.
They were hanging out with me all night. We were chatting, socializing. So yeah, I don't know. Another story is being in a party, and so I'm Egyptian, or half Egyptian, half Lebanese. I never watched Arabic TV in my life. I could barely speak a word of Arabic when I was young. I'm at a party, which is a private party for Arabic celebrities. And so I'm with a friend, and my friend walks away, and there's a guy standing beside me. So I'm like, okay, I have nothing to do. Might as well talk to that person. So I said, hey, how's it going? My name is David. What's your name? He looks at me and he's like,
Hmm.
my name's Khaled. I'm like, oh, okay, Khaled. Pleasure to meet you. I go, what do you do for a living? And he thinks I'm like taking the piss.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm an actor. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Anything interesting you've done or whatever?
Yeah.
Turns out this guy was Khaled al-Nabawi,
Yeah.
who I don't know who he is personally.
I still don't know who.
He was in Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom. He was in Arabic TV.
Nice.
I met all
Yeah,
these
yeah.
Arabic celebrities that night, and the next day I Googled them, and I'm like, oh, wow, these are really, really
Yeah.
famous people. So, make a long story short,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
Yeah, it's
There's-
happening. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how people get starstruck anyway with celebrities.
No.
I'm the same thing. Like, I sometimes go out of my way not to give them any attention, like just to make sure.
I do
Like,
the
hold
same.
on, like I'm not interested in any of this. You're a person. I'm not.
Yeah.
You are nothing but flesh and blood like me. I don't understand these. You know,
Yeah.
you see Beyonce, then people are shaking on the floor and crying, and I'm like, haram. This is
Yeah.
haram. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You're idolizing people like this. They're no different. They're just lucky. They were in the right place at the right time.
Are they lucky?
Yeah, well, no, because you
Right.
can't walk around. I mean, it's hard for me to go through malls, man. Remember yesterday? Like, I was walking through the mall and all these
Yeah.
people were like, excuse me, can you get out of the way? I'm trying to go that way. But
Yeah.
soon that excuse me will turn into, hey, I know you. Let's take a picture.
Do people come up to you and say, hey, I know you?
No, I've had it a couple of times. I actually had a cute thing the other day when I was at Champ's gym outside, and you know, one of the kids kind of walked past the car, and then he looked like that, and then he was like, and I was like, oh, okay, he knows me from the podcast, but then I was like, let me pretend I don't know, and then he went in, then he came back out, and he was like,
JWJ?
yeah, he looked like that, and I was like, all right, and he knocked on thing. It's like, are you Jabber? I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, me and my friends, we watch your thing every time. It's really cool. And I was like, okay. And then that kind of made me feel, I was like, that is pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
It is cool.
Yeah, why not?
Actually,
But I don't think I'd like the whole huge celebrity thing, because just mainly for food. Like when I eat, I like to eat, bro.
And
Like,
shopping. Right?
yeah,
For the-
I'll take everything. Yeah, I mean, how am I gonna get these name tags? Because everyone's gonna know about it now, and it's gonna be like not as easy as that.
I know, but maybe by then you'll have freebies. No need to have the name tags.
no.
People just give you things for
I
free.
got all the freebies. It's
You
not
do?
the same, bro. They don't taste as good.
Mm.
Even the clothes. Just
Yeah.
get a free T-shirt. We'll give it a
Yeah.
lick. It's not the same, bro. It's not.
You need
It doesn't
to
have that. Yeah, I need to know that somebody's wages getting cut, or somebody is gonna get in trouble for what they just did. You know, or at least they pretend, or if it's a nice, mom and pop family business, I want the wife and husband to argue after when
Have
I've
a
left.
fight.
Yeah, have a fight
Yeah.
about it. This was our last piece of bread. One of
Yes.
these kind of things.
Let's do it.
Dude, thank you so much. It's been a real
It was
pleasure.
my
Thanks for taking up the
pleasure.
time
No,
and
it was
coming
my
down here,
pleasure
dude.
completely.
And we'll get another one on here soon.
I would love it.
Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. And forget about the first minute of the session when all the guys in the room decided to take over the podcast. And we'll get ready to go. See you soon.